Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is David Zutatis. I am a university counselor, and I am the coordinator of the diploma program at Fort Erie International School, and I'm joined by Alvin Zhang this evening.
大家好，我是伊利堡国际学校的张老师，我今天是整个讲座的翻译。刚才 David 老师说，大家好，我是伊利堡国际学校的学校课程顾问，然后我曾经在很多地方担任过这个大学的招生官。
I would like to just give everybody a brief background so you know where I am coming from. I have 30 years of experience counseling students on university admission and transitioning from high school to university. I've worked with universities from all over the world. I've been a leader in this community to assist students in moving to university. I'm also a father, and I've had 4 children attend college and university in multiple countries. So I do appreciate where you as parents are coming from.
我有30年的高中大学升学指导经验，25年的多伦多大学招生工作经验，3年辅助学生申请全球名校的工作经验，曾经在 IACAC、NACAC 担任过机构成员。我也主要开一些讲座，讲关于升学指导的内容。然后我呢，还是4个孩子的父亲，孩子们目前都在就读大学，所以说我也很感谢今天能来听讲座的各位家长们。
After 25 years at the University of Toronto and recruiting students to university for the last few years, I've been helping students directly to gain admission to university. And I am very proud to say that my students have been admitted to more than 95 different universities around the world, 14 different countries. They've been offered more than $900,000 US dollars in scholarship to those universities. And this page is just showing a portion of those universities. These are all universities that are ranked in Times Higher Education or QS as being among the top universities in the world.
在我之前的升学指导经验中，我有学生进入到了世界前95所的名校当中。这95所名校分布在不同的国家，同时呢，在过去的2年当中，超过90万的美元的奖学金发给了目前的这些学生们。
And when we speak to university admissions, I am bringing the perspective of students that may want to look at university in more than one country. And even if students are looking at a university in only one country, very commonly when students ask a question about what does a university look for, the answer is it depends, because each university sets its own admission policy. Policies in different countries can be quite different. And also, even within the same country, even within the same university, admission requirements for different programs can be very, very different. So research is needed.
在我之前的升学指导工作当中，有很多学生都在问大学到底想要什么样的学生。其实这个问题的答案应该分情况考虑。首先要看学生到底想去的是哪所大学，其次要看这所大学在每个国家。不同的国家它有不同的升学体系，之后也会涉及到这个内容。然后其次就是要看学生到底想学什么样的专业，不同的专业对于课程的要求和学生的综合素质的要求都是不一样的，所以说首先要想好自己到底想要向哪个方向发展。
And when talking about admissions, there are some universal principles. For all countries, the academics, the grades, are normally the most important thing in the admissions process. Does the student have the right courses to study their university program? Are the student's grades competitive for that university program? And then in addition to that, standardized exams, essays, interviews, and extracurricular activities, what a student does outside the classroom, may or may not be very important.
在弄清楚想要学的大学和想要入的专业之前，我们来看一下入学要求的一些概述。基本上学校对于学生的要求还是分数占的是主导地位。那么要拿到相应的分数，首先得选择相应的入学的先修课。其次呢，就是你的这个分数一定要有竞争力。其次就是要在有学科分数的基础上，再配合一些标准化考试的成绩，比如说托福雅思的语言成绩。然后还有配合学生个人的文书书写，来陈述一下你个人的学术背景或者是学术知识。其次就是面试，还有就是课外活动。这不同的国家它的入学要求是不一样的。同一个国家因为学校和所学的专业不同，要求也会有所不同。
And then beyond admissions, scholarships, recognition for the students' excellent grades, recognition for the students' excellent participation and community engagement. Scholarships vary as much as university admissions. They will be very different depending upon each university, and sometimes they are automatic, while other times an application is required. So in addition to researching university admissions, students will also need to research scholarships specifically, and they will need to follow that parallel process for scholarship consideration.
接下来要谈的话题是关于奖学金。每个学校对于奖学金的设置和对于奖学金的申请过程，它都有所不一样。大学呢会根据学生的这个提交的申请的这个信息来判定是否要给予申请人这个奖学金。那么奖学金到学生的手里边也有不同的方式，奖学金可能就是自动授予学生了。那么奖学金呢，还有可能需要学生额外提交申请才能拿到这个奖学金。大额的奖学金呢，通常需要申请，并且会考虑学生的整个的综合素质。
Now, I mentioned grades are the most important thing when it comes to admissions. Most universities list grades as the most important, the largest weight in the admissions process. Standardized and external exams, though, are commonly required. English exams for students where English is not their first language, those are required virtually everywhere. TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo, Pearson. So there are a variety of acceptable exams that may be taken. SATs or ACTs are also very common exams, but these are really only used for the United States. Other countries do not normally ask for these exams. If a student has written them and they have good grades, they may try to submit, but normally they are not required in other countries. And similar to SAT or ACT, advanced placement tests, these are part of an enriched curriculum, which is a US-based curriculum. They would be only required if a student were doing a US high school diploma. And same thing would be for SAT or ACT. Normally, a university would only ask those if a student was doing a US high school diploma. However, if a student did that as an enrichment, they may support their application. Or for scholarships, they may support a scholarship application, but they are normally not required. International baccalaureate courses, these are accessible only if a school is often offering the International Baccalaureate Diploma.
我们下面要谈的是标准化的第三方考试。这些考试呢是在申请当中必不可少的，基本上全球的一些顶尖国家的顶尖大学都认可的一些考试。首先就是语言测试，对于一些非英语为非母语的这种申请人的语言的测试，包括我们比较常见的托福、雅思、多邻国，还有皮尔逊，这些都是比较常见的语言考试，而且各个学校也基本上都接受。而且这些考试现在目前因为疫情都可以在家网上参加考试。其次就是 SAT、ACT 考试，这个考试只用于美国的大学的学院和大学申请。这个 SAT、ACT 就相当于美国的高考，就是上大学必须得参加这个考试。加拿大的学生也可以参加这个 SAT 或者 ACT 考试，如果他要申请美国大学的话。然后1000所美国的大学都可以选择性的参加这个 SAT 或者是 ACT 考试，也就是说有些大学可能是这个不需要这个成绩的。然后其次就是 AP 课程，这个 AP 课程就是大学的先修课，其实也是一种方法，能证明申请人足够的优秀。如果是在高中课程都完全学完的情况下，可以先申请去学1到2门的 AP 课程。这个 AP 课程会在申请奖学金，还有申请一些好的大学、好的专业都会起到决定性的作用。其次就是这个 IB 课程。IB 课程主要是针对国际留学生开着这么一种国际的这种体系，在读完 IB 的课程之后会获得相应的 IB 证书，这个也会在大学当中会增加申请人的竞争力。
All of the above things I've mentioned, the tests, the grades, possibly essays, are used in admissions, but they can be used in very different ways. And right now, I'm going to describe briefly admissions in the United States, and then in Canada, and then in the United Kingdom, and speak briefly about what universities are looking for in those different countries and how they may use the same information, but in different ways to make an admissions decision.
我们之前上面刚说了关于入学的一些要求，但是不同的大学对于这些因素的参考方式和如何去审查这个申请人的材料的方式是不同的。所以说以下我会以一些实际的例子来讲解一下这些不同的国家、不同的院校对于这些材料是怎么样运用的。我先会提到美国、加拿大，然后其次是英国。我们会看一下不同国家是怎么运用材料的，其次我们要看他们是怎么样做出决定来选择一个优秀的学生的。
So let's start with the most complex system for admissions, the United States. Because when people think about applying to university, this is the model they most commonly think of. It's a model where universities are using grades, essays from the student, recommendation letters from teachers and counselors at the school, the curriculum that the student is following, the activities they do outside of school. All of these different things may be used in what is called a holistic admissions model, where they're building a picture of the entire student. And the intent behind this is to create an accurate picture of the student beyond just grades.
我们首先要看到的是美国一些院校对于入学学生的一些要求。美国的体系比较复杂，所以说他们需要学生提交的材料也会比较复杂。大致可能包括学校成绩、老师们的推荐信，还有学生所选的课程，还有学生所参加的课后活动。招生官会以所有学生提交的这些信息来综合判断一个学生的综合能力。他们希望通过 学生提交的所有材料能全面的了解一个学生，而不是只侧重于分数。
I will say, as a counselor working with students applying to U.S. universities, it can be both painful but also very fun to assist them in writing essays, to describe themselves, to paint a picture of themselves, so that the universities can see how well-rounded they are and how they would fit very well into that university community.
申请美国大学来说，对于学生和对于升学指导老师来说，有时候是件比较痛苦的事儿，但是也是同时也是特别有意思的事儿。升学指导老师和学生在这个过程当中都会通过一些准备材料的过程，让学生自己很清晰地了解到自己做过哪些活动。同时在提高材料之后，也会让学校对于学生有一个全面了解学生的一个机会。
And when counseling students for applying to U.S. universities, it's also very important to be helping the student with the research early on in their high school career or as early as possible, so that they can have guidance in selecting extracurricular programs and activities that will make them stand out in the admissions process. But because of the diversity of universities, what will make them stand out for one university is not necessarily the same as for another university. So for instance, a student who might be applying to MIT must be very technical, must be very focused on program, whereas a student applying to Michigan State would have a very different profile.
在申请美国的大学之前呢，我们一定要做足功课，得让学生充分了解到自己想要一个什么样的学术发展，想要一个什么样的职业发展，然后在弄清楚这些的基础上，尽早提前申请，配合学生的学术和职业发展方向来去给学生安排相应的课外活动。但是呢，因为美国的大学比较多样，你给一个大学准备的材料可能不太适用于其他学校。比如说，有学生申请麻省理工学院，这个是比较侧重于科技和技术的。如果是拿申请麻省理工学院这种顶尖院校的材料去申请密西根州立大学，可能密西根州立大学不太能接受这样的申请材料。
And when talking about the United States has more than 4,000 post-secondary schools. So there is a lot of variety. And in creating a case study for the United States, it's challenging because there are so many different models to choose from. The chart for the slide that I've just put up on the screen includes information about non-selective universities. Those would be universities that will admit anybody as long as they have a minimum grade. Selective universities, those are ones, they're competitive, but the grades, the test scores, the courses the student took will likely be the most important thing. And then highly selective, I'll get to that in 1 second. Second one. And then highly selective universities. And the highly selective universities are the tier 1 schools, the top universities where everyone knows their names. It's the grades, it's extracurriculars, it's the essay. Students have to demonstrate leadership. Students often have to demonstrate original research. So it's very challenging to know what the student will need until they know which universities they are applying to. Also, it can be very different from year to year. Possibly in 1 year, a university needs somebody who will play a musical instrument, and they'll give them priority over another student. Other times it may be a student who is interested in an unknown academic program.
美国的院校有4000多所，在这4000多所院校当中，我们可以简单的分为3类。首先，第一类就是要求不太高的学校，那么只要是有这个高中的成绩，然后能达到他的入学要求，基本上不太会挑剔申请人。那么其次呢，就是这种选择性的院校。选择性的院校比第一类的来说，它的侧重点要会除了成绩以外，可能会有其他东西，比如说你的领导力，你的这种活动参与度，还有你的社工活动，还有你的这个自我的文书的陈述。那么最高一类的就是一些顶尖大学，那么这些大学可能大家都听说过名字，他们的侧重点除了成绩要拔尖以外，还会参考很多学生的课外活动，而且最重要的是，顶尖大学对于学生的要求还有可能每年不一样。就比如说有些院校可能今年就会招音乐生，但是那么明年呢，可能对于音乐生的要求就没有那么多了，然后可能明年会再招某一些学术方面的优秀的申请人。
One additional part of admissions that highly selective universities or highly selective programs may ask for would also be an interview. And a common question is, what do they ask during the interview? And again, it depends. Some university interviews will be done by an alumni of the university. And that alumni of the university, being a graduate, is looking for how the student will fit into the university community. While other interviews may be done by a faculty member. And if it's a faculty member interviewing the student, they'll look how they will fit into the community, but likely they will also be judging their engagement in the academic subject that they're applying for.
关于申请当中还有一个最重要的一环就是面试。经常有学生会问我，这个面试官一般都问什么问题，或者是谁去主导这个面试。那么主导面试的可能有2类人，第一类是学校的校友，也就是说从这个学校已经毕业的学长或者是学姐，他们会看这个学生是不是能够符合或者是参与到学校的这个整体的环境当中来。其次，主导面试的还有可能是教职工。教职工除了要参考学生是否能融入校园环境，还要看他的学术完成度到底有多高，也就是说他能否在学校当中顺利的开展学术课程。
I mentioned earlier that it is a pleasure to help students write an essay to paint a picture of themselves. When they have to do an interview, I will also say that it is quite enjoyable to do the practice interviews with the students, to give them sample questions that have been asked in previous interviews. The most common question, introduce yourself, where the student has to introduce themselves very quickly in a professional manner. But then additional questions that may be asked about programs, sometimes views on what is happening in the world, volunteering activities, setting up interview panels, mock interview panels for students to help support them in the process is something that we do once we know where they're going.
我在指导学生升学的过程当中，我会给学生练习升学的面试。我会在面试当中穿插一些之前著名大学面试会提的一些问题，比如说 让学生做一个专业的自我介绍，让学生介绍一下学校的专业，或者是让学生介绍一个世界上发生的大事儿，或者是学生介绍一些志愿者活动、课后活动。我会通过这种模拟面试的方式来让学生顺利的通过面试，进入自己想读的专业。
And now to a simpler form of admissions, normally, Canadian admissions. Most Canadian universities are admitting students based purely upon their grades. So when they apply, they're saying who they are, where they have studied, and then they submit their high school grades, and they receive a happy letter, an offer of admission if they have been admitted, or a sad letter, a refusal if their grades are not strong enough. Some programs, though, will ask for more information, such as business, engineering, architecture, music, drama, nursing, or art programs.
我们下面来讲一下这个加拿大的大学入学申请。在加拿大大学入学申请，我们以安大略省为例，在安大略省申请大学是要通过 OUAC 的。OUAC 上面你所有的学习的历史和你学习的成绩分数就是你申请大学的凭证，不需要额外的递交文书。如果是需要递交文书的，额外的材料是需要直接提交给大学。那么加拿大的其他省份呢，是需要在大学的官方网站上进行完成申请。大多数的专业在加拿大只看重学生的学习的分数。那么常见的专业要求提供文书或者是面试，比如说商科、工程、建筑、音乐、戏剧、护理、艺术、教育等。
Now, I can use a case study from another universities, but I think this one, University of Toronto, ranked as one of the top universities, research universities in the world, across all the different rankings, Times Higher Education, QS, the Shanghai ranking of the academic world universities, research universities. But if we compare two programs within the same university, University of Toronto, you can see Rotman Commerce, which is a very popular program, and the Humanities, which is also popular, but not as popular as Rotman Commerce. For grades, Rotman Commerce will be looking realistically at grades in the low 90s. And one second, I'll get back to the other side. Rotman Commerce will be looking at grades in the low 90s. Admissions to the humanities, history, languages, English, literature, and U of T teaches 54 languages. So there's a lot that can be studied in the humanities. For admission, students only need grades mid-80s, and they would definitely be competitive for admission. They would probably be offered admission with that. Humanities only looks at grades, but Rotman Commerce looks at those grades, low 90s, very high grades, plus a written statement and video interviews that the student records online. They're asked a question, they have a minute to think about an answer, and then they would have to record a 2-minute video giving that answer.
我们接下来来看一个加拿大的这个大学申请的案例分析。我们以多伦多大学的罗德曼商学院和人文学院做个简单的比较。罗德曼商学院是加拿大多伦多大学最具欢迎的专业之一。那么其次呢，人文学院也是最受欢迎的专业，但是不如罗德曼商学院受欢迎程度高。我们首先来看这两个专业的分数要求。首先，罗德曼商学院对于分数的要求是80到90分， 但是以我们的升学经验来看，进入罗德曼商学院的均分至少在93分以上。人文学院的升学的入学要求是80分，也就是说，以我们的经验来看，他们的入学要求最低的分数基本上在83分。当然，申请大学的过程也是不一样的。人文学院只看重学生们的分数，只要分数达到了相应的要求，完成了相应的先修课，就可以进入人文专业学习。那么罗德曼商学院呢，除了分数必须得达到要求以外，还需要有个人的简单陈述，也就是我们经常提到的文书，还要有申请人事先在网上准备好的视频的这个介绍。
And an additional thing about universities, when researching the universities, on the slide that I put above, those are screenshots I took from a public website. It is very easy, and Canadian universities are quite transparent when they're talking about which grades would be competitive for admission. So doing research on Canadian universities is easier than doing research on U.S. universities for admissions, because sometimes information in the United States is unclear. But Canadian universities, and also in a moment you'll find out UK universities, are very direct and try to be as transparent as possible to talk about what grades are needed for admission.
加拿大大学的升学要求相对来说比较透明，实际的大学生入学操作也是按照官方网站上指定的要求来招收学生。加拿大所有大学入学要求都在官方网站上有很清晰的陈述。相比于美国和英国来说，美国的升学体系比较复杂。学校招收学生看重的点，我们刚才也提到了，会比较多。但是英国呢，和加拿大一样，也会比较直接，也会比较透明。
And now UK admission. So UK admission is also very straightforward, and for the most part, grades again are the most important thing. The UK is a bit different in that they have a common application called Ucas, U-C-A-S, and the student does write a statement for Ucas. The counselor also writes a statement for Ucas, but those statements are really talking about the student's academics and how the student will excel in the academic course they're applying to at university. So they're very different from the U.S. applications. And finding information about UK universities is very easy as well. In the UK, the student does have to write the UCAS statement. Their grades are most important, though. The exceptions, however, are for the most competitive programs and most competitive universities, Oxford and Cambridge, or programs like medicine or dentistry or law. Students that may be interested in those universities or those areas of study will have to most commonly write an external test for admission to those universities and programs. An interview will often be required for those two universities or those highly selective programs. However, most programs in the UK are looking at the grades and simply reading the student's UCAS statement. So for most students applying, it is actually a very simple application process. And again, helping a student write about their academic strengths, how they would why they would do well at that university in that program, such as economics or history or science, is a great pleasure as well.
英国的入学要求也相对来说比较简单，分数也是他们看重的特别重要的一个部分。在英国申请大学的时候，同样也要用一个网站叫 Ucas， 就是英国的大学申请的网站。这个大学的申请网站会有学生的这个过往的学习记录，包括分数和所修的课程。在这个网站上用这些信息去申请相应的大学。对于一些顶尖的院校，比如说牛津、剑桥，或者是里边的一些医药学院，除了学业的成绩以外，也就是说 Ucas 上的成绩以外，还需要有额外的材料的补充，同时也会需要参加一系列学校组织的面试。但是大多数英国大学的项目在 Ucas网站上完成申请都会相对来说比较简单。
And now a case study for Ucas. Again, different universities will have different requirements. In this case, I'm using LSE, London School of Economics, consistently ranked as one of the top universities in the world. Now, for two different programs within LSE, you'll see anthropology and law. They are looking for grades in the UK grading scale, AAB. But for economics, they may look for A star AA. It would be much easier to be admitted to the anthropology and law program for a student than economics because of popularity of the programs. And economics would put much more emphasis on the Ucas statement.
我们来看有英国的大学的在 Ucas 上申请的两个专业，一个是人类学，一个是经济学。人类学对于英国的考试 A level 的要求成绩是 AAB， 那么经济学对于 A level 的要求是 3个 A， 然后再加数学的 A， 同时还要补充尽可能多的数学的这个要求，还有要考虑这个AS 考试的这个分数。我们可以看出来，在经济学这个专业当中，要求明显要比人类学的这个要求要高很多，因为这个经济学是比较受这个国际留学生欢迎的这么一个项目。
Now, a quick explanation about AAB. Because in the UK, students normally would write 3 different subjects as what are called A levels. And admission is really based upon those 3 subjects. Now, a student who was coming from Canada and who was doing the Ontario High School Diploma, the OSSD, Ontario Secondary School Diploma, they would also be considered for admission directly to UK universities because the Ontario Diploma is recognized around the world. But they would also need grades that were A's or strong B's or A star, which is a grade that would be in the high 90s.
我来简单解释一下英国考试 A level 当中的 AAB 到底是什么意思。AAB 是 A level 考试当中3门课程的分别的分数。那么 A 当然是85分往上，那么 B 呢是80分，然后 A 加呢那就是90分往上。那么同时呢，如果你是要从加拿大申请去英国的，我们可以直接用加拿大的 OSSD 课程，也就是说安省的高中毕业课程可以直接用于申请英国的大学，因为安省的高中毕业课程是在全球都认可的。
So, one thing that becomes apparent when we talk about admission to the different countries is that a counselor being familiar with the different education systems is very important to make sure that the student understands what the requirements are so that different education systems can be translated. And beyond the grades required for admission, non-cognitive indicators, the student's character, how hard they work, do they give up easily? The context of where the student is studying or how many schools the student has studied at. Is the student engaging and participating in the community? And are they taking advantage of the opportunities that are available to them? All of these are very important things in admissions that the counselor can help with.
学生除了要了解大学对于学生的学术上的要求以外，其实还有一些大学会考虑到的一些隐性因素在里边。就首先，比如说学生的性格，这个学生是不是做事儿比较坚韧，是不是容易放弃做一些事情。然后其次呢，就是学生的成长环境。这个成长环境就指的是学生到底参加过多少学校，转过多少次学，还有就是是不是积极参加学校内或者校外的一些活动，还有学生在学习生活的过程当中是不是特别的努力，是不是特别的上进，还有就是学生是不是有足够的机会去接触到大学升学指导老师，是不是有完备的升学的这种指导流程。
There is incredible choice for your son or daughter. There are thousands of universities around the world. There are hundreds of different academic programs, and the careers that your son or daughter will enter, there are thousands of careers, and these are constantly changing. New opportunities are always coming up. So it's essential that every student receive the support to do research, to prepare them for selecting the best university for them. Is it the best academic program that gives them the most opportunity? Is it in a location where they will be happy? Is it a community that they will enjoy?
我们目前有很多的大学选择，大学的专业就有100余种，全世界有超过25000所大学，大学生毕业之后能从事的这种职业的这种数目每年也是在变的，因为职业在每年的细化，有新的职业在出现。学生所需要的升学指导就变得特别的重要，这样能帮助学生的升学指导，能帮助学生选择更好的专业，能发挥这个他的长处，然后也能选择一个比较理想的地方，让学生去展开他的学习。刚才我们也说到了，就是是否接受过大学指导，也是某些学校看重的隐性因素之一。
Your son or daughter at this point of their life, and right now I'm thinking of entering between grade 9 to grade 12. They fall into a category of individuals that are between 15 to 24 years old, where research really describes this as an exploration stage in their life. Because there are so many different options, it's really important that they do career research to give them focus on which university they may want to study at and what program they want to study. In the Ontario curriculum, that's actually part of the curriculum starting in grade 9. And at FIA, we enhance that opportunity. Each student on an individual basis gets to explore their skills and aptitudes to help guide them to the area where they are strongest and where they have the most interest. They can discover careers that will give them a very good future, but they will also discover careers that will give them a good future and leave them feeling fulfilled and happy. And we know that as parents, we all want our children to be successful and very happy. So that personalized attention is essential. And at FIA, all students get that throughout their time on campus.
我们来谈一下升学指导的重要性。安大略省的课程职业研究中心的研究表示呢，15到24岁的学生其实正处于大学的了解和职业的了解阶段。因为在安大略省，以安大略省为例，这边的课程相较于国内来说，它比较复杂，所以说当地的学生也需要一定的时间去了解自己到底想要干什么。所以说168国际学校呢，我们要做的呢，就是根据学生的能力来帮学生快速精准地找到自己的长处和兴趣点，然后基于学生的长处和兴趣点，会给他安排相应的课程和之后的升学指导和课外活动。了解学生的兴趣点是特别重要的第一步，这样能让学生明确地掌握之后的学术方向，从而能更好地选择大学和专业。那么明确的学习兴趣呢，也能让学生在大学学习期间更有动力。也就是说，学生正在学习的就是他所热爱的专业，那么之后从事的工作当然也是他热爱的工作，所以说能让学生在大学毕业之后也能找到一份学生比较认可的工作。
So, in a bit of a summary, university and career research is really needed before you can say what a university is looking for. The research is needed to find the best university for the student, to make sure that the university is prestigious and has the program, and it's a university that the student will enjoy attending, to know the admission requirements, to discover scholarship opportunities, to identify future career opportunities, and to give the student the skills to be successful at university and to adapt to a changing career workforce.
刚才我也谈到了大学的选择和职业规划是特别的重要的。那么具体我们要在大学选择和职业规划当中做什么啊？我简单的给大家介绍一下。首先就是你要找到目标的大学，你到底要看自己想去哪所大学，然后要在结合大学和专业的同时，要了解入学的要求，明白大学到底想招什么样的学生。刚才我们也谈到了，它不同的大学对学生的要求是不一样的，对学生的能力要求也是不一样的。当然，对于学生的一些隐性因素的考察也是不一样的。然后，如果你申请人对奖学金感兴趣的话，他可以了解学校的奖学金制度，同时要了解毕业之后的未来就业。那么结合自己的目标，完成相应的校外活动，在明确的自己的学习和职业发展的规划当中，可以在基于自己的兴趣和职业发展当中配合做一些校外的活动，这样准备会让学生在大学当中很容易取得 offer， 然后很容易取得成功。伊利堡国际学校会帮助所有的学生完成大学的申请和规划，1对1的全程指导学生来完成大学申请当中所需要的相关工作。
And I would like to thank you for joining us today. We hope that you have some questions. I know that when I was asked to talk today, I was asked for, hints as to what universities would be looking for. What should a student do? And again, that is a question that has many, many answers. And that is why understanding the different school systems, understanding the admission requirements for specific universities, and understanding what kind of a career a student wants to end up in, research is required to help find those specific answers.
感谢大家今天来参加我们的讲座。我们今天讲座主要是谈到了一些大学入学方面，不同国家对于学生的要求是不一样的。所以说，各位家长也可以根据自己的孩子的大学申请的请求，或者是自己孩子在未来大学当中可能会存在的一些问题，我们也欢迎大家能在现在的之后的这个时间踊跃提问，我们也会给大家留出一点时间来解决有些家长的个人的比较细化的问题。如果各位家长有问题的话，可以把问题打在屏幕当中，我可以给各位家长来翻译问题。
Both UBC and U of T are excellent universities. I worked at U of T for 25 years admitting students from all over the world, and I've traveled with my colleagues from UBC, and I've been on the UBC campus many, many times. So really it's what is most important to you. In terms of education, they are comparable universities. They both do a lot of research. The cities, Vancouver and Toronto, are both very diverse, very welcoming cities, but they have a different feel to them. And that, quite honestly, would be the biggest difference between the two universities, that and also possibly scholarship. There is no bad decision between UBC and U of T.
多伦多大学和 UBC 大学在学术上其实没有太大差别，然后他们都是要当然他们都是顶尖的学校，然后他们都是要去做很多的研究。那么两所学校所在的城市呢，也都会比较多元化，然后他们也比较城市里边来自各族的人都有。所以说我个人感觉在两所学校之间没有太大的差别，所以说我觉得您选的做的这个选择还不错。
There are more hospitals in Toronto. This is true. Ontario has a larger population. Toronto is Canada's biggest city, with almost 6 million people living in the greater Toronto area. I know that compared to China, that's not so big, but in Canada, that is huge. Work opportunities. One really good thing about studying in Canada is after you graduate from a Canadian university, a student can stay and work in Canada for 3 years without any difficulty. This is much more generous than the United States or the UK. Their after-school work is restricted. If a student completes a degree in Vancouver, but then wishes to work in Toronto, they could move across the country and work, because in Canada, the student can take a job anywhere in the country and they can move. However, during their university studies, if a student is looking to have work as a student, which they can do, get practical experience, get workplace experience, then maybe considering being in Toronto with more hospitals may be more important to the student. I would say, though, that Vancouver, as British Columbia's biggest city and the third biggest city in Canada, still has a lot of opportunity.
大多伦多地区一共有600人，但是相比起中国来说，这个人数可能不是很多，但是在加拿大这个人数已经很多了。所以说再加上加拿大的移民政策，所有的学生在毕业之后都有3年的工作签证，相比于美国和英国来说，这个是特别好的一个政策，因为美国和英国的那种工作签证是受到限制的。那么其次呢，在学生毕业之后，他们可以在加拿大的任何地方 去工作，只要他们持有工作的签证。然后其次呢，作为加拿大第3大城市的温哥华，同样在那里机会也会很多。
I would like to thank you very much for attending today. And if you have any additional questions about admissions, do feel free to reach out to our school and ask to speak to me. But again, thank you very much for attending this session today.
很高兴大家能来参加今天的讲座。我们的今天讲座到这儿就结束了。如果大家有进一步的问题，欢迎来到伊利堡国际学校来咨询我。我们学校呢目前也接收国际的学生，所以说您有任何问题可以直接找我或者直接找 David， 我们都可以再给您详细解答您的细化问题。最后谢谢大家。